Hey everyone, welcome to the show. We're doing a special edition Saturday stream on all things Blast. This is the ultimate Blast farming airdrop guide. I have 4 different Chad traders. These guys are absolutely top notch, all walking me through their own specific strategy, how to maximize your airdrop for Blast. And by the way, if you're new to this, if you don't know what Blast is an L2 developed by Pacman. This is the founder of Blur, the very, very popular and the leading Ethereum NFT marketplace. He launched this L2 in February. The testnet was live back in January. People have been bridging over a record amount of ETH to this since November. And what makes it special is it has a 5% native yield that people get automatically by having their ETH on this platform. Real quick, I'm also giving away $200 in Pacmoon, which is a meme coin on Blast. If you're listening on Twitter, all you have to do is go to my profile. You'll find a tweet on there that you can enter. If you're listening on YouTube, all you have to do is just comment. Just like the tweet, like the stream, comment, let us know you're here, and we'll pick someone at the end of the stream. To kick things off, I am joined by Ray at RCIV NFT on X on Twitter. He is the head of research at the Nifty. He was early to Pacmoon, very early to Pacmoon. He's been talking to me about this for quite some time. He's absolutely crushing the Blast farming game. And I like his personal farming strategies because it's more so just trading and finding profitable trades, finding things he can get into. Just this week, I think you made like an ETH on a little 3x leverage long on Pacmoon. But Ray, good to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Happy to jump on, talk a little Blast. This is what I've been, spending a ton of my trading time on. So happy to answer any questions, let you know what my strategy has been. We'll talk about that a bit more, but for me, it's always been getting early and kind of like going all in on the things that I am in, and then kind of rotating if it gets old.
Absolutely. And so walk me through it real quick for people that might be listening to this. I think a lot of the audience might be early to Blast or still doesn't really know what it is. I gave a very quick rundown, but can you walk us through what Blast is at a very high level, 30-second rundown, how you're viewing it and the potential upside this could have in the coming months?
Yeah, definitely. So Blast is an L2 developed by Pacman. You talked about that. The guy who created Blur, toppled OpenSea as the market leader. Like, very hard to do that for a market incumbent. So what makes Blast unique, you talked about, is the native yield on Ethereum and USD. Right now, you're getting 3.3% on your Ethereum. You're getting 10% on USD. In addition to this yield, he's created this points farming Ponzi where, you want to build up as many points. You want to build as much Blast gold as possible to get exposure to what we're thinking is going to be a Blast token airdrop. So, the game is, stack points, stack gold. And then as you're doing this, your own stack should be going up as well. So my theory has been, with this, it's, hold your capital, at least break even. If you can make money, great. Mm-hmm. But holding capital and getting exposure via points and gold is the way to go.
Got it. Absolutely. And you can go to this. We have a bunch of links in the YouTube description if anyone is asking. I saw Andrew asking, how do we get started? Basically, all you have to do is bridge ETH to this L2. It's it's relatively easy to do. And then you can actually get started on it. So the way you're looking at it, Ray, is like, basically, I want to try to hopefully break even, if not make a profit on Blast. And in that process, through the usage of different dApps, accumulate gold, which will then correlate to, or points, which will then correlate to a Blast token airdrop when this TGE happens. How much, well, if you don't mind me asking, how much gold have you gotten so far, and how much ETH did you put into this, or did you bridge to Blast at first?
So initially, I think I threw 2 ETH into the multi-sig early. I know there was like a ton of FUD early, but I wanted to be kind of in there out of the gates. I didn't have a huge stack to start with. So what I focused on initially was kind of referral farming, and not in like a super spammy way, but find people, that would interact with the platform, kind of give them your thesis on it, and then try to get them to sign up. And then, I've been working with like a lot of the people who I've referred to, which has been great, working on strategies together, figuring out the best ways to farm it. So great way to kind of get exposure with low effort. After it went live, I probably bridged over another 5 ETH total. So call that maybe 7 ETH total bag. I'd say it's probably up 50% since we've started. I'm sitting on about 300 gold, just about 80 million points right now in terms of the farming. I definitely didn't optimize for gold, like out of the gates. I was in a couple different dApps early, but not really focusing on gold until, maybe the last 2 weeks where I've really kind of increased the intake.
Got it. And how much gold have you accumulated so far?
291.
Got it. Got it. And there's ranging prices between how much that'll end up actually being from a token perspective. There's things like the overall gold supply that we don't really know what that's going to look like. How much of the token allocation gold people will get, or gold recipients will get. So there's a lot of different variables at hand there. But when you look at the opportunities right now on Blast, Ray, and kind of what you're doing right now, what do you feel like is your top 2 kind of biggest opportunities to farm on Blast right now? Whether it's Wasabi, whether it's depositing USDB on like underfarmed protocols or dApps. How are you thinking about this? And for someone listening, like, what do you feel like is one of the best opportunities they can take advantage of right now?
Yeah, definitely. Should I share my screen and jump through a couple of these just to like kind of give some visual where we're going?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll share this window. So right now, I'm looking at, I'm in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different kind of farming opportunities right now. And they're kind of, I have my cash split up between them. I have a small amount kind of in each. And then what I try to do is like rotate and focus on the one that I think is the most valuable right now. The most valuable I think right now is Fantasy Top that just launched. We'll talk about that maybe at the end, but I'll just roll quickly through some of the other ones. We talked about Bloom. This has a very low TVL and user number based on how much Blast Gold they're allocated. If you're looking at Blast Gold allocation, you can easily kind of scroll down and see how much people have left to allocate. Bloom still has 270K Blast Gold left. They only have 11 million TVL. Basically, the play here is you can either leverage trade. You can go long, go short on major currencies, or you can deposit USDB into their vault and lock it up. I've deposited USDB into the vault and then I locked it. There's different locking periods that give you multipliers on the gold, and you still have an out if you are worried about protocol risk. You can withdraw early for a 10% fee. So I locked like basically max duration. I think it was 180 days. Knowing that if there is protocol risk, I can, take my Blast airdrop, at the end of May and then just withdraw, take a 10% penalty. And hopefully that difference between the Blast points allocation and the 10% would cover that.
So how much USDB did you put into Bloom? The reason why I asked, I put in like $800 in here. I deposited it and I've just been playing around with it a little bit. The reason why I asked though, Ray, is there's also an additional boost for actually using the platform, right? So for taking these leveraged longs, you can do it on like the Blur token, which I thought was interesting. So this theme that you've been talking about of like kind of trading and trying to break even basically on some of these trades feels like a potential better opportunity than just depositing USDB. But obviously the USDB deposit is a lot safer. So if you can talk me through that, that'd be incredible.
Yeah, so USDB is like I said, safe, and maybe it's like a little bit outsized in terms of reward. Maybe there's like a minimum reward you can receive on the platform. It might not be completely linear, so it doesn't hurt to have just a little bit in some of these platforms. Right now, I mean, I have a decent chunk. I have $1,000 USDB in here, locked for till October 24. And like I said, you can unlock and you would take a 10% haircut on that. Like you're getting 4x on gold points, etc., for doing that lock. And
the reason why this is your thought process for choosing Bloom in particular, just so people can understand that are listening, it might not be like so in the weeds of this. Basically, what we found is Bloom had a significant amount of gold allocation that they still hadn't given out. They had a low amount of users comparatively to other platforms. I think they have less. Last time we checked, they had less than 5,000 users. Right. So for you, And our thought process was like, hey, if we go in here and we are a bigger user, comparatively speaking, we can get a bigger slice of the pie.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, looking at this versus other more crowded trades, like Wasabi is probably gonna be a little bit more crowded than this.
Yeah.
Juice and Thruster are probably more crowded than this. They've been kind of like top of mind and also have distributed a good chunk of their airdrop. You look at like Juice has distributed a good chunk already. I mean, they still have like a similar amount, but Juice has like a larger TVL and more users. So that trade's a bit more crowded than Bloom would be. So that's kind of like looking through these. And if we get another, Blast airdrop or a Blast gold allocation, the first thing I'm going to do is, look at them, see who's on there. If it gets loaded onto the airdrop page, scroll through this, see how much they've given out so far, see how much is available. And you can use that information to kind of put yourself in a less crowded trade.
Got it. And bigger picture here, right? Like, I want to zoom out a little bit because I know we don't have too much time with you, and I want to wrap with fantasy top. Like, if you think about the next few months, right? Obviously, you've put 7 ETH in, you're up over 50% so far, and you're getting like I really like the way you're approaching this in terms of getting plugged into different dApps and kind of finding the right plays that you're most comfortable with, but also taking that trader centric approach. A lot of people that I've talked to are like, I farm this platform using X, Y, and Z. I go in 15 minutes and I use Thruster and I interact and I like swap back and forth. To me, I hate that. I like this idea of going in, trying to trade and actually use the platform versus just like farming it. You're farming it in a more like organic way, basically.
Yeah.
Sorry, go through that a little bit more. Like,
Yeah, I was going to dive in. So, like, I mean, there are opportunities where, like, that makes sense. If you have a smaller bag, you do something like District 1, where you can get rewarded for being active, essentially. There is no capital requirement or a very small capital requirement.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nice, but I just don't have the bandwidth. Like, I think with the capital I have and the bandwidth I have, it just makes more sense for me to spend that time looking maybe from a trading perspective, somewhere where I can also, flip things to earn ETH as well as earn the points, earn the gold. So I'm definitely kind of leaning towards things like that, but there are those other opportunities out there. District 1, Sakai Glory is a trading card game that did very well for the first allocation, not as well in the second one, but there's word they'll do well in the third one. There is what else is out there? I know Easy was talking about Captain and Company was pretty low capital, but high effort. So different things, depending on where your bag is, there's always a way to kind of earn your gold.
It's a balance of how much time you have, how much time you're willing to kind of allocate to this, what your capital is, your total bankroll, right? Like, for example, I'm not putting in more than $10,000, right? Like I've like my total bankroll right now in Blast about $9 grand, and what your risk is, right? Like, some people are actually more willing to lose money, right? They're like, I'm going to put in 10K. I'm going to lose 5,000 of it. Like, I'm willing to lose that, which is kind of crazy because I know that my losses will be made up and then some by the Blast allocation I'm going to get. And that's what another guest is going to talk to us about. But you're taking kind of a different approach. But before we wrap up with District 1, I want to quickly talk about the play, just a trade wise that you've been, I would argue your most successful one, which is the Pacmoon token. This is a community token. It's a meme coin on Blast that you got in very early on. You were telling me about it back in like season 2, very early on. I got an airdrop in season 2. You've made a couple plays and have made a pretty good chunk of cash on it. And right now it's sitting at a 90 million FDV. Walk me through it. How are you kind of thinking about how this could play out? Is this still a good play, even regardless of the Blast farming opportunities that could be used for it? But even so, you can buy it and then use it to actually farm the gold. So just walk me through how you're navigating and thinking about Pacmoon.
Yeah, so I think we're looking at my trades basically. Just a couple longs basically. After the airdrop, I went long after it dipped a bit. I closed that out, unfortunately, way too early. I think we were below 10 cents at that point. But trading on Wasabi feels good for Pacmoon. It feels like there's less risk for liquidation. It's got almost like a solid floor because the way they've set up, their token community through, all the Twitter rewards you get and through like the content. I think they just have like a social floor that makes it hard to like see a huge like dip in the token. I trust the team behind it. So like I feel like Pacmoon has legs, and I think that it's undervalued here for sure. It's something I'm not selling my spot. I'm holding. I actually had it deposited in Wasabi, but after the lottery,
yeah,
after the lottery, we kind of saw like, okay, well, I had to make a decision. Do I want to deposit my wrapped pack into the deck, or did I want to deposit normal Pacmoon into the deck? We didn't really go over the lottery yet, but essentially like a real quick rundown. You get 8 slots of for NFTs or tokens, and the way it works is as one of these is picked potentially, you win a percentage of the jackpot. So
right.
What's happening here is like they have some like guidelines about how you can win and like what odds you have, and they're saying they're weighing it based on like number of holders who have added it to the deck, total number of holders, the distribution, community engagement, social strength. So like these are all checked off by Pacmoon, especially the base token. It's going to have by default better distribution, and more holders than the Wasabi wrap token. You can still deposit the Wasabi wrap token in, but it would be treated as a different token than normal Pacmoon. And there'd have to be some like kind of like adjustment or like correction if they were to offer it to, all holders as opposed to people just holding the liquid token.
Pacman did say he was potentially working on like making them the same. I'm doing the other way, Ray, where I still have my W pack basically, which is the deposited Pacmoon. I just have it as two slots basically. So there's you said 1 million gold up for grabs here, and it keeps going up by a specific amount. Is this all done at once? Basically, there's a chance that the jackpot is hit, and then that 1 million gold is then distributed to whatever. Is it evenly, or how does this work if your card slot gets hit, basically?
Yeah, so I haven't seen anything about like the odds of hitting each of these, but you can see like if you're like looking at this closely, you can see like there's different percentages. So I'm assuming jackpot gets hit, it'll be a percentage of this total jackpot will go out. And then, looking here, it's distributed based on the amount, like however many people have it in their deck. And you would get like the ratio of your deposits to that. So if you have like, 50% of the Pacmoon that's in decks, you would get 50% of that gold, essentially, if you were like a giant whale. So it really depends on how much Pacmoon you have in. So like just putting one of a token in isn't going to give a big reward. So you're still going to want to put, size into some of these. You don't want to buy just a single token just to be part of the lottery, because it's going to be diluted based on how many total tokens are in the lottery.
Right. Gotcha. Well, makes sense. Ray, I think we're going to have to talk. We'll do a little fantasy top deep dive in the future, but I do like overall, I would summarize, correct me if I'm wrong, your strategy is more so using these dApps or just figuring out trades that you can make, finding the uncrowded kind of farms, use those dApps in pretty much an organic way. Like I saw you on YOLO Games yesterday, putting in like 0.2 ETH or like playing these different games. You won some and you lost some, but for you, it's thinking about it as like, if I lose, I'm going to try to win as much money as possible. But if I lose some, even then I'll still get points. I'll still get gold and try to navigate it that way.
Yeah. And YOLO Games isn't one I spend a ton of time on. I enjoy jumping on the stream with you guys, getting in some of the Moon or Doom, getting in some of the YOLO with you. But that's not one I'm spending a ton of time on, because I don't think that is one necessarily that could pan out, especially if you have like a medium to small stack, because if you lose enough without the odds kind of turning in your favor, you're going to be in trouble. You're probably like the EV is probably like you're going to lose 5% over time, but you could potentially lose like 30 or 40% swings either way. So
I did do that yesterday. It was, but there are people the way they're playing like YOLO Games, for example, and it's basically like a coin flip basically for some of these games. But the way they're thinking about it is, or farmers are thinking about it is like, if I can just basically break even on this and literally hammer this thing like 50 times, eventually, even if I lose like 5% of the time, the gold that I'll accumulate over time will make up for the loss. And that's kind of the common theme within a lot of farmers or traders that have had success farming gold. But Ray, thank you for joining, man. Make sure to follow him if you're listening. Ray is the head of research at the Nifty. He's been working with us for quite some time, and I've had an absolute blast working with him. Make sure to follow him at RCIV NFT. Thanks again, Ray. Have a fantastic weekend. The next guest we're going to have on, I'm very excited for. We're going to have legendary underscore NFT on Twitter. He's the host of The Modern Market. He's not only a very successful content creator, but a fantastic trader. I look up to him. I love seeing the trades he's been making. He's been absolutely dominating recently. And he's also the recent owner of a Mad Lad. We got a new Mad Lad community member that you won using Insrt on Blast, which we're going to talk about in a bit. But legendary, thanks for coming on, man.
GM, thank you very much for having me. I've been listening to the first part. Absolutely love the Blast farming season and love that you set up this live stream today.
And you've been crushing it. I'm very excited to break some of this down, but very quickly, walk us through what the heck happened here, how you pulled a Mad Lad using Insrt. I'm going to be honest, I've never heard of Insrt, but it feels like well, I'll let you walk me through it, but how the heck did you win a Mad Lad?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically the way Insrt app works, so I looked it up. They have, 174K gold that they received with a very recent distribution, definitely a gambling product. And what you can do is you can put in ETH and you can just spin. And you either will win mint tokens, which determine the amount of mint tokens that you hold, determines the amount of gold that you're getting, or you have a specific chance to win certain NFTs or Apple Vision Pro. I think they also have, for example, a friend tech pump where they buy 3 ETH worth of your friend tech key, which might be a bit obsolete after the airdrop. But they have all those various prices, and you can basically select what you're competing for. And if you look at some of the odds for some of the smaller prices, like a checkmark by Jack Butcher, basically, if you look at those odds and you work that out, it's almost an EV neutral play. And it kind of connects exactly to the conversation that you've just been having.
Right.
That some farmers like to see those odds to win an Opepen or a Milady, to just sharing on screen, do the math on that and figure out if on average I hit those percentages, I will break even on that and I will have farmed some gold. Now, obviously, there's risk to that because there is volatility, there's winning streaks, there's losing streaks. So it's definitely a thing to be more careful about, especially when you go for higher spins. In my case, I got super lucky. I did 25.01 ETH spins, had a 1 in a 600 chance to pull a Mad Lad and hit that. So that's obviously not the norm, and that's not the expectation I want to set with gambling. But also going to the conversation that you had, if you look at the Blast farming and try to think about amount of money, amount of time and capital that you want to put in, and you can afford to go on a longer betting streak and you have a bit more capital to play around, you do want to size your bet accordingly, go for lower bets, go for lower prices. And essentially the goal should be to break even on that so that you're quote unquote like farming Blast gold for free. And definitely do the math on that. Like once you get the distribution or you see a past distribution, you can stalk other people's wallets, see what they did, can plug them into Rabby, which is a wallet alternative to MetaMask, and basically look at the website from their perspective. So because you mentioned YOLO Games, you can track someone's wallet in YOLO and go and see how they did in Gold Rush and what they spin up, etc., and do the same with Insrt app. Because what you want to do is you want to do the math and see how much you end up spending in dollar terms per gold that you're farming. And ideally, you want that number to be as low as possible, right? We had NFT Stats who did the math, which initially was $18 per gold. He did correct that down a bit now that we have the Blast Gold jackpot that you guys just mentioned, as well as Blur. Blur on Blast is super significant. It's too big to be ignored. It's now the largest gold farm with 2 million gold to be distributed until the end of May, which if you do the math on that, that's 66K gold a day. That's insane. Like an app, like again, Insrt got 174K gold in the last distribution. So basically, Blur gets that or assigned that to themselves within 3 days, right? So that's one that is too big to ignore. And again, you want to do the math there. You want to look at the farming and see if that plays and how that pays out for you. But I think what you also want to do, and maybe that's a bit more in a strategic note, and I'll let you jump in because I've been on quite a long monologue, is you don't want to go all in on one app. Like especially with Blur on Blast, right? They said it quite specifically. There's no transparency on the points until the airdrop happens. You're not going to know if it's going to work out in your favor or not. If you basically farm a collection, they change the rules retrospectively. Like, say for whatever reason they cancel all points on PlutoCats, which you just had open, and you farm that collection, you can end up with 0 points and with 0 gold. And if this is everything that you did, then you walk away with 0 gold at the end of the season. So even if you have a small stack, I think it's super important to try to diversify that across different platforms.
Got it. And I appreciate this breakdown. And real quick, so what Legendary is describing, someone asked, how do you earn gold? And kind of maybe we'll start from there. Like, what even is gold? And correct me if I'm wrong, right? Let me know if I say anything wrong here. But Pacman, who is the founder of Blur and also this Blast L2, distributes gold to dApps basically however he sees fit. There's different metrics that he chooses, but as you see here, Thruster, which is a spot DEX, received 1.7 million gold, and they can receive this gold and they can distribute it basically how they see fit. Some can even keep it all for themselves. Obviously, all of them basically do not do that and use that to incentivize usage on their platform. They also have points that they give out, but you earn points and you also earn gold, which gold, like you were saying, was priced recently at $12 per gold. Before was at $18, and it's dependent on what the FDV of Blast is upon TGE. But on that note, Legendary, you've been farming this for a while. What I would like to know, we were speaking to Ray earlier, who was like, hey, I put in 7 ETH in so far. I'm up about 50% on the ETH, which is fantastic. And he's earned a few hundred gold. Walk me through how much you've deposited so far and how much gold you've earned up to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe one small addition to your gold explanation. I think it's also important to keep in mind that the gold basically is, or the airdrop is distributed in a way that 50% of it goes to gold. So no matter how much the points will be inflated, the gold value in terms of points will also increase with that. I think right now we're seeing 35k gold points per gold, and obviously with the multipliers going up on Blast, also the amount of points is shooting up extremely. So that's nothing to worry about. You're not going to get diluted as a gold holder by points. Obviously, you get diluted by more gold that gets introduced, but gold is pegged at 50% of the total.
So half goes to points that are being accrued and half goes to the Blast gold. So it doesn't really, what you're trying to get though, right? Right now it's people are trying to estimate how much gold ends up getting distributed. Is it 35 million? Is it 100 million? Whatever it ends up being, the price per gold may go up or down, but the way to think about it is you're trying to get as much of the share of gold basically as possible, but don't be married to specific prices because those can all like. Another variable to think about is like how much of upon the TGE, how much of the Blast supply, the Blast token supply actually gets distributed right away, right? And how is that going to play into it? And then you have the question of like, okay, what's Blast's FDV right upon launch? Is it going to be 5 billion? Is it going to be 15 billion? So a lot of moving parts here, but I'll throw back to you in terms of how much you put in, what you're looking at in terms of your goal total and what your winning strategies have been so far.
Absolutely. So I did deposit on day one, but had like a very small stack. So
and this
honestly,
is in November.
That was back in November. So quite underestimated Blast back then. That was way before launch. The deposit like, I don't know, 2 ETH, 2.5 ETH, nothing big. Then once we got closer to mainnet launch, I deposited a bit more. And once mainnet launched, I topped it up. I would say my overall deposit is, again, it's not the biggest in terms of ETH. That's 10 ETH. And a bit of USDB that's farming as well. But honestly, the return that I saw on that is not significant given the amount of capital that was deposited. I like the native yield, but I'm going to leave that out of the equation completely. Because
so real quick, you put in that 10 ETH and you're just kind of letting that sit there. There's a small amount that you're just like, hey, I'm just going to let it sit there.
No, the 10 ETH are farming actively. Another wallet has USDB that's doing passive things, but I'm not going to factor into the gold calculation because it's too little compared to the 10 active ETH, basically.
Awesome.
And I'm super active with my ETH. And basically have yesterday crossed the 4K gold mark. So sitting around in the top 350-ish to top 400-ish of gold farmers right now with, I would say, a relatively small stack compared to some of the, absolute giga whales who are depositing. But I'm certainly following, and I'm happy to dive into that if you wanted me to. I'm certainly following a very active strategy. Like I do spend multiple hours a day on various protocols farming around.
Well, walk me through it. Absolutely. And this follows the theme that I was talking about a little bit earlier with Ray, right? And for a lot of people listening, it's like the reason why I like this structure of bringing on like 4 different traders is each one has different time they're putting into it, different bankroll that they're putting it. Like Ray, for example, only put in, or he put in 7 ETH, right? You're putting 10 ETH, and different strategies, right? Some are actively farming this. Some have different time commitments. Some have different risks. So yeah, please walk me through your strategy, kind of how you're navigating this, what your day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, I think to start on that note, my risk appetite is super high. Like I'm very happy to lose all of that 10 ETH and top up more if I think I'm getting a good gold distribution. So I'm not looking to necessarily protect that capital. Hence, I'm willing to go heavy on Insrt app. I'm willing to go heavy on dApps like Cambria, for example. Let me see if I can share my screen on that.
Cambria is the gaming platform.
Cambria
right?
is in the gaming segment, as you perfectly said. What you basically can do in Cambria is you can duel with all of those beautiful people around here. You have NPC duels that are happening once every hour that you can wager on. There's one starting in 15 minutes. And when you duel, you are dueling either for arena points or you're dueling for ETH. And here is the important thing about that. When you're dueling for ETH, there's obviously a house fee. So you do pay 4% in rake for every duel that you do in ETH. So if you do a 1 ETH duel against someone else and it comes out that you win that, there's 2 ETH, you do pay 4% on that. You do pay quite a lot. However, all of that that rake is being returned to players. It's the most active duelists every week. Sometimes it's the ones who have the largest volume. So basically by doing that, and you can see it on the top left of my screen, that I've been able to collect a bit more than 700 gold by playing Cambria alone. You end up doing the math that if you are willing to risk more and get to the top of those rankings, you are collecting your blast orb, you're filling that up with charges. Then you get to open more and more blast tomes. And by doing that, basically you increase your overall ranking in the high score, and that ultimately decides how much gold you earn. And if you're obviously also on the more active side of things, you're receiving more of that rake back. So that was the math that I was doing. If I play that lightly, I'm not going to get back as much as if I go heavy on that. There's a couple of rake back mechanisms. I don't want to go into all of those details, but the general idea is, and that's the strategy that I'm following with more protocols, is you get rewarded over proportionally if you go in heavier than the others, because it's very, very top heavy. And the question is, can you afford to lose that money? Can you afford to do that wagering volume? I certainly have wagered more than 50 ETH in Cambria so far, and have paid obviously my 4% on that. I mean, that's the gist here, right? You need to get those rewards, because getting that rake back ultimately means you have quote unquote like lost less money and get your gold price down when playing.
So you're playing Cambria, and what does your day-to-day look like in terms of how much time, if you had to estimate on this one specifically? I actually, besides that question, this feels like more of a, correct me if I'm wrong, a whales game, right? You want to go in a little bit more aggressive versus be a smaller fish into this pond, because the rewards are heavier distributed towards these kind of top players.
You can there's certainly ways to whale it out, but there's also ways for smaller players. If you do small bets like 0.01 ETH and you run a couple hundred of those, and essentially the battling, especially if you pick a specific type of weapon, is a coin flip. So if you do a couple hundred battles, you're obviously expected to win half of them and lose half of them. And there's rewards. There's like those cash out Fridays, where they distribute to the most active players who had the most duels with at least 10 different opponents. That was the last distribution. So the way to look at Cambria is either you can whale it out, and there's people like Hero who are doing that very, very strongly, or you can be like super, super active. And right now, the way to not whale it out and be active is those NPC duels that I mentioned before. They're ending tomorrow, but they will come back, I think, as an event every weekend or something like that, where you're betting non-ETH, but the in-game tokens that you can collect by playing jewels on one of those NPC characters. So my routine, to answer that specifically, looks like that right now. Those NPC battles happen every hour. I try to get as many in as I can across the day, and also do a couple of duels while I'm doing that, just to maximize my orb earning potential, which again ultimately translates into the amount of gold that I'm making on this game.
Got it. And is this is my next piece of how, like, an additional layer of complexity to this? Is Cambria dropping a token? Are you earning points for a potential token in this one?
I think so. Yeah.
So this is another layer that I want people to be aware of in terms of ROI when thinking about farming these dApps, which we have not seen yet at all, basically, right? Is that there are going to be tokens launched by a lot of these dApps on Blast. So not only are you farming points or whatever it is for this Blast Gold, but you're also farming the actual platform's points, which is potentially going to be a token. That's a whole nother thing where I was talking to someone else, a legendary, and they were like, hey, we're going to see DeFi Summer 2.0 basically on Blast. When post TGE, we're then going to see additional TGEs of tokens like, and I don't know if this confirmed it, but like Wasabi, for example, is going to start doing something there.
Just two comments on real quick. A, the Cambria token obviously is my own personal speculation on that. And B, if you think about the jackpot system that you guys just talked about, that is actually an incentive for projects to drop their token pre-Blast TGE. If you think about something like YOLO is super active, right? They've generated more fees in a day than MetaMask or Base, which is absolutely insane. And I do spend quite a lot of time there as well. If they have the incentive to do the TGE before Blast TGE, because then suddenly they have an ERC20 that is eligible for the jackpot system. And right now, the only big ERC20, I mean, of course, there's others, but the only one that really is out there is Pacmoon. Yes, you have Ola from District 1. Yes, you have Juice who had the TGE, but definitely in terms of ERC20s, it is Pacmoon that's getting all the attention. And I could see some of those teams who've been thinking about doing a token that they might, if they're in the position where they're able to do it, that they might try to do that a bit faster and get some of that jackpot attention, especially based on the criteria that you guys mentioned, community strength, et cetera, to get a piece of that action as well.
It's basically trying to, there's different layers to it from a player's perspective, right? Which is what we're talking about here from traders, but also then from a lot of these dApps, it's figuring out what the landscape is upon these levers that Pacman's pulling over time, and then how to position yourself at the top of that, basically, right? Which is what we're seeing here with Pacmoon. They joined very early on, and they've been able to kind of build side by side with Pacman. The additional nugget on top of this, and it's what I want to talk to you next about, is the NFT front, right? This week, May 1st, what we saw was Blur launch on Blast. We obviously saw a huge amount of incentives, which we talked about a little bit earlier, given in terms of gold given out. But Pacman has hinted at potential new rewards coming out for NFTs. He said it in multiple podcasts where he says that right now you're actually at a disadvantage when you buy an NFT, right? Because when you buy it, you're tying up your ETH right now into this platform or into whatever it is you're doing, into the NFT collection, right? Even buying NFTs on Blast, you're disincentivized to do so because you're, instead of earning this 5% native yield, you're throwing that away and you're buying this NFT. What he's also said, and what I think he's hinting at, is that the incentive system right now for Blur is a little bit broken, right? Because basically what people are incentivized to do is to buy the NFTs as fast as possible and then dump it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Right. How are you navigating the Blast NFT front? Or do you have any theses for how Pacman could potentially figure this out in the future? Do you own collections like Blastopians? How are you navigating the NFT front, if at all?
Yeah, there's multiple questions in there. Let's maybe start with the first and larger part that you mentioned, with how Pacman is navigating all of that and how he might be thinking about that. I think, as you said, that's perfect. The NFTs have an disadvantage just by the fact that they're not earning native yield, right? Nobody really wants to hold an NFT because it doesn't do anything other than being able to qualify for the jackpot. You're missing out on native yield. And this is why we're seeing this high turnaround on Blur, where people just buy 10 ETH of Blastopians and dump them in the next minute, including myself, right? I'm doing the same thing. So one way to potentially think about that is to find a way to give a native yield to NFTs. The other way to think about that is to find a way to bridge mainnet collections somehow to Blast, established mainnet collections. I think we've seen Machi coming up with a bridge for exactly that. That, however, is such a big move because it would put all the teams under a massive pressure. Now imagine something like Miyazuki. I'm now with Miyazuki in Memecoin, and I'm farming those anime points to do my gacha spins daily. If I could bridge my Sloth and Miyazuki collection suddenly to Blast, then I have to make the decision. Do I want the native yield of my collection, or do I want to participate in whatever incentive system the project I'm holding is coming up with? And what that does is it basically forces those projects to integrate with Blast. So Pacman could go for that like forced move, or even if he isn't, maybe others are building a bridge, as we've seen that with Machi, and kind of force others to integrate with Blast. And I think that's that certainly to a certain extent has to be on his mind, because obviously he's aware we are in the middle of season 1. It's going on for another month. That will end. There's very, very likely going to be a season 2, but you can't continue that like perpetual carrot and gold chasing, right? You do want to grow. You do want to integrate with other platforms. Some of the platforms and dApps are already multi-chain. Something like Wasabi not only exists on Blast, but also on mainnet. And you also want to go the other way. You want to attract more platforms to be able to come to Blast. And you're doing that right now by having Blast Gold, which is essentially free marketing for teams to onboard users. But you want to go beyond that. And this is where I think that NFTs could play a massive role. So that is to that side. My personal strategy, again, Blur and Blast, 2 million gold points, 66K a day, too big to ignore. It's become part of my daily routine to go to Blastopians, to go to other collections, buy a ton of them, flip them, repeat that process. Again, it could end up that there is a criterion that says, hey, if you were holding that NFT for less than, I don't know, fucking 2 minutes, it's not going to be eligible to earn Blast Gold points. And that's the strategic move of only distributing at the end. Because if you distribute now and I see I have 100 gold and tomorrow that goes to 0 because Pacman is changing the rules, people will be pissed. If you do that at the end, nobody will know because you basically allow yourself and leave yourself room to adjust, which you have to do because all of the volume that we're seeing on Blur right now, which is insane, but is essentially people selling and buying amongst themselves, right? Blastopians, 1 day volume, 980 ETH. Plutocats, 2,000 ETH. That's insane volume. And if you look at that, if I buy Blastopians worth 5 ETH, I can sell them within a couple of minutes. And worst case, I dump them into bids after half an hour. Obviously, you have to be careful here. Floors can move very fast. Attention can move very fast. We've seen that with collections like PacRect, who got disabled from points. Now points are re-enabled for PacRect. So attention is moving very fast. The thing you don't want to end up with is to buy a shit ton of whatever JPEG, go to sleep, and wake up to that going to 0 because everyone is farming now a new collection for whatever reasons. So velocity is very, very important. I'm not comfortable to have any overnight positions open. I'm not even comfortable to walk away from my laptop and get myself some dinner while I'm sitting on, I don't know, a bunch of Plutocats.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I was bidding on something, and then I got the NFT. I was like, okay, I'm cool. And then I went to go get lunch, and then I came back. I was down 25%. It's the manipulation is so on Blur now that it's not on ETH L1, which came with transaction fees, which came with time. Like they weren't instant. Blast, I was shocked when I bought my first NFT. I was like, literally went through right away. It was like Solana. And then you have no royalties, which on top of that is another layer on top of that. So it's anyways, the reason why I bring this up is like the ebbs and flows now that we saw on ETH L1 now comes so much faster because there's that instant dump that people can do. Obviously, there's that 30-minute buffer, but definitely worth monitoring and thinking about. Before we wrap, obviously, we have a few more minutes with you. And the next piece actually on this NFT front, I love that you're thinking about and you're kind of navigating this right now. The next catalyst that we're thinking about is season 3 is supposed to end May 20th. On November 20th, Pacman or Blur shared that this was going to last 6 months. The 6-month mark would be ending on May 20th. The question marks that people are thinking about are, what's Blur going to do? What do Blur points get? How much allocation is there going to be there? The sell pressure that comes with all the staked Blur and the potential fixing or restructuring of incentives. How are you thinking about season 3? How are you thinking about the Blur token, which right now is sitting at an FDV of 1.1 billion and that entire ecosystem right now, Legendary?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because you have, as you said, you have Blur ending, then you have Blast TGE coming, you will have Blast Season 2. And I think that to a certain extent, those will start to converge a bit, because obviously we now have Blur on Blast as well. And I can imagine that it's getting super difficult to navigate two tokens. Obviously, it makes sense to have a token for your marketplace. It makes sense to have a token for your L2. But incentives across those two, in my opinion, will be shared even stronger. Like we already seen that on Blur, you're earning redacted, which many people, or I think almost everyone's thinking is hinting at the Blast token and not at something else. So I do think that we will see those incentives between Blur and Blast aligned very, very strongly. And to me, I have a bit of Blur staked. I'm not very active on Blur mainnet. Like I'm definitely not trying to compete with CBB and the others. I do think that this has gotten to a point where people are able to perfect their strategies over the last year, working with scripts, working with bots, working with a huge amount of capital, being able to prop up markets to dump on you. So that has become a very, very competitive game. And I do expect that at some point it will become similar on Blur and Blast as well. Right now, it's nothing like Blur on mainnet. But for me, my focus is going to be more on the Blast side of things, because there's so many more protocols and there's so many ways to get ahead of that curve, because things are so new, as opposed to try to compete with a product that has existed for a good year.
Identifying where you have a competitive advantage is so important. For example, on Blur, I was trying to farm Blur on Blast pretty aggressively, actually, because I saw the points distribution. I was like, oh, this is an absolute no-brainer. I need to do this. And I just got dominated by these people that have trained this finely tuned machine for the last year and a half or so. So it was hard being able to compete with me and like a 0.5 ETH basically trying to do it. I still think it's worth doing, but I like allocating your time, your budget. I basically moved it to like below 10%, right? What I'm going to talk to, where I feel like I actually have an advantage, for example, is Fantasy Top, given this social layer to it. And I'm going to talk to ICO Beast about this next, because he's been on it a little bit and same with Wardaddy. But for you, where do you feel like you have the biggest competitive advantage? What are you most focused on when you look at Blast, and how you're navigating the next few months? It's very interesting to think about the next few months and how the attention economy could continue to play out with a token like Pacmoon, for example. But I'm curious where you feel like this is my arena, basically my home base that I feel like I can crush from a competitive perspective.
Yeah, there's 3 ways to approach this. Segment 1 is everything GambleFi. Good bet sizing, being able to go through longer win and loss streaks, being able to calculate EVs and to find out which strategies make sense and farm gold in that way very, very aggressively. Obviously, that's not for everyone. Second strategy, which I never really see people talk about, is find protocols that are new on Blast that haven't received the first gold distribution, something like Kettlefi. Kettlefi, real world asset tokenization, borrow and lend against your luxury watches. They got 180K gold. I was using that before it was announced that they got that gold, and almost nobody was bidding on watches on there. So basically, it took 20K in USDB and bid across different watches. Never had a single bid hit because there were still a good amount of them. Never had the highest bid. And got a couple hundred gold by doing that for free. Paid $0 for that. Then they got the gold and everyone jumped on it. So find protocols who haven't received that gold distribution. So how do you do that? You go on X. You follow some of the bigger content creators, like Jen, like Wardaddy Capital, people who talk about Blast, but obviously not the protocols that they are talking about because they're already live, but see which protocols start to follow them because newer protocols try to get the attention. So basically you stalk the protocols that are following them. You use the search on X because the naming is not very creative with so many of those protocols. There's a new gambling platform that does roulette on Blast, and the name is Roulette on Blast. So if you just search, I don't know, Roulette Blast, Poker Blast, whatever, names come up to you, you will find protocols that nobody's aware of. Most of them won't go anywhere. Some of them will. And it's on you to kind of evaluate that. That's time intense. It's also risky with smart contract risk because there is rugs out there. So I don't go for things where I have to deposit money, rather where it's about the turnaround, which is placing a bet, getting your money back or not. Depending on whether you win or lose. But this is how I like to approach the second strategy. And then the third segment to me is something we talked about. It's basically multi-dipping in protocols where I think they might have a strong TG themselves, or something like a Juice Finance Vault where I was able to farm Wasabi, farm Juice, farm a Renzo token because restaking is a very, very strong narrative, and do multiple things and even be like, okay, my gold output might not be the highest, but I'm farming those 4 or 5 other things there passively,
right,
which might make up for that. So those are the 3 sectors, the 3 strategic ways how I like to think about my Blast farming.
I love it. I love it. Well, Legendary, it's a pleasure having you on the show. I appreciate you sharing your time with me on Saturday. Keep dominating the content creation, the trading. Absolutely a fantastic follow on Twitter at legendary_NFT. Also the host of The Modern Market. If you are an early riser in the Eastern time or very early rider in PST, make sure to follow and listen to The Modern Market show. It's at Modern Market _ on X. These guys are absolutely dominating, held with B-Check. Fantastic content all around. These guys are Chad traders. Can't wait to see what Legendary does this year. I'm an absolute fan. Legendary, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. All right. We got, we're an hour in. It's been an absolute blast so far. Guys, no pun intended. The next guest that we have on is ICO Beast. He's at Beast_ICO on Twitter. Not a lot of followers. If I'm going to be at, like, when you look at, and that's not an insult, by the way. What I'm saying is he drops some of the best alpha, some of the best knowledge actually doesn't come from people that have 30, 40, 50,000 followers. It's about following people that may have like 2,000 followers, like Beast, who has been crushing content on all things. He's been making some fantastic calls on Twitter. He's got some receipts that he's been DMing that we're going to share later on in the show. But ICO Beast, I'm going to bring you up. It's fantastic to have you on. We're going with Chief Degeneracy Officer at ICO Beast Capital. ICO, it's good to have you on, man.
Hey, good morning, Clemente. It's good to be here.
It's good. Well, it's good to have you on. I appreciate you sharing your time with me. I want to talk fantasy top with you. I want to talk meme.fun. But overall, just your farming strategies, kind of your thought process on how you navigated this. To kick things off, out of probably all of the guests that we're going to have on this show, I would make the argument that you were the earliest high conviction trader, or that made the move really in this early. I remember seeing tweets from you when the Blast debut did not go with fireworks, right? And people were like, oh, this was an absolute bust. Pacman fumbled the bag. Pacman didn't do it well. And I remember you tweeting like, hey, the more fun, the better, basically, because Pacman's not going to miss. It's going to take time. And that bet played out. To start out, I guess I'm curious, like, when you first got into Blast, why you felt like this was going to be and continue to have huge potential. And if you could walk me through that to kick this off.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So like you said, Blast has been probably my biggest conviction play in the last 12 to 18 months. certainly not a large follower account, certainly not a large capital player. I've been in crypto for a long time, and the fact that I haven't made gen wealth probably says something about my ability to trade. But I quite simply don't have a ton of capital to play with. But Blast has been something I think, in hindsight, obviously it's obvious, but beforehand was too. We've seen Pacman basically captivate the entire crypto world for the past 18 months. He launched Blur. That was the talk of everybody. He launched it right into the middle of the royalty share wars when projects on ETH L1 hadn't delivered anything to holders other than like apes getting ApeCoin, and then everybody else having these crazy valuations on their companies and NFTs, and then delivering nothing for 2 years. And so people are like, wait, why are we paying a 10% tax on every trade? So Pacman blasts out Blur, and he lets us trade them without royalties. And then everybody's like, man, we love trading NFTs. It's really fun. He then like slowly walks back the timeline for getting the Blur token, all this. Everybody's like, wait, this sucks. Why are we not getting our free stuff? Crypto people are some of the most entitled people in the world, so it's really interesting to watch that. But so he walks back this timeline for getting the token, and everyone's like, why are we even bothering to farm? This is going to be pointless. And then the people like Moritz that farmed season 1 aggressively absolutely cooked everybody. Because so many people, the consensus was to fade Blur because, it's a useless platform, OpenSea's the king, whatever. And then he made like, what, 250K off like a 5 ETH bankroll? That's insane. The return there at a relatively low risk is nuts. So Pacman did that, and everybody's like, wow, we really should have farmed. So then season 2, CBB and the cartel and everybody else comes in, and they start farming Blur, and it becomes a total whales game. And they cleaned up. Good for them. I mean, CBB made a ton of money. Hanmi made a ton of money off of season 2. And so what you realize is that you have to be early to these plays if you're not playing with a 1,000 E bankroll. And so for me, that's what Blast is. It's the native yield chain. It's the only one that exists. It's run by a guy who already showed us that he can deliver tons of value to people that are willing to play the game. And so when I found out what Blast was, I didn't deposit very much. But I think I bridged like 0.1 ETH back in November when it first came out. So very minimal into the multi-sig. Because I was like, why am I going to lock up my ETH for 6 months? At that point, we didn't have any documentation either. It was literally just a multi-sig on mainnet. It was like, wait, why are we just sending money to multi-sig that Gainsey has one of the signatures for, which fair. But so when it got closer to mainnet launching, I bridged a little bit more over. I think probably my total bridging was like 1.5 ETH at the start. I think I'm probably up to like 4 ETH bridged in right now, but my like operating capital is in the 10 to 15 ETH range. So I've made some good gains on Blast, but at the same time farming gold. But the idea was that season 1 was faded by everybody on Blur. The same thing happened with Blast. People hated the launch day. Most of the teams that were launching stuff at the start were horribly unprofessional. We had literal North Korean government hackers like running Munchables and stealing a bunch of stuff. Like it was completely botched on the rollout, but Pacman's still behind it. He's not going to let it fail. So that was the idea was we go hard on something that Pacman thinks is going to really cook, and we play his game.
And you did do that well. So I love, a couple things stuck out to me there, Beast. The first is the idea that if you want to make outsized gains, basically you have to, and you have a small bankroll, you have to be early and also figure out like your high conviction plays and get in there early with size, meaning like a part of your portfolio, right, that you're willing to allocate. Obviously, I pulled up this tweet of you on March 1st saying that like, hey, everyone fading Blast on day 1, let that play out, like bring it on. And Twitter's an interesting place, right? People are very reactionary on there, myself included, right, in terms of what's going on. And I think what's important, what I've learned is to figure out and take the Twitter stuff with a grain of salt, or figure out how you can use it to your advantage, basically. Because if you're going to react with everyone else on Twitter and get caught up in that emotion, part of that will actually end up biting you in the ass. Talk me through your strategy. You said you're up, you put in, I think 4 ETH or so. Now you're up to 10 to 15 ETH of operating capital. Walk me through from a high level, kind of what your thought process is in terms of what your risk out, like how much you're willing to risk, how, like, are you trying to break even? Are you trying to break a profit, willing to lose some money? Obviously you made, I'm assuming you're up significantly on Pacmoon, for example, but walk me through some of your plays. And keep in mind, Legendary walked me through Cambria already.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that probably the best kept secret in new chains or new protocols or new areas is RefLink farming. It's got kind of a bad rap because I think you see a lot of people on Twitter and a lot of people in the various crypto spheres, like the actual really big accounts, they push a lot of garbage and they get you to use RefLinks and stuff that really is only profitable for them. Ethically, that's not cool for me, so I just don't do it. I'm not willing to push a RefLink for something that I don't actually think is valuable.
Right.
But so for me, that meant getting in early, finding the valuable protocols, and then getting access to RefLinks that get me some kind of kickback. So that's the best way to grow your bankroll if you're a small player, is find actual value, show that it's actually valuable, and get people that have size to buy in as well, so that you get a little bit of the share while also getting them value. So for me, Cambria, well, we've already talked about that, so I won't go in depth. Cambria has a rev share feature if you invite people to the game. I knew it was, no, sounds pompous. I had a high conviction that it was going to be very, very profitable from a gold distribution perspective, even with the 4% rake. And I have friends that have much bigger bankrolls than I do, and I knew they wanted gold. So I found a spot where there was going to be a bunch of gold. Nobody was on it, and I knew we were going to spend while we played through this thing, and I was going to get some revenue from that would offset some of my farming costs. And then we won a bunch of ETH in the protocol anyway, from winning Excaliburs and payouts and that sort of thing. So I mean, I've dueled 140 ETH in Cambria, I think, which when you think about the house rate, that's substantial. But I'm actually up because of the winnings that we've gotten from that. So that's one way. Another way, I also only make bets on projects where I have actually talked with the founders at length. It's another one of those things when you're trying to preserve capital and protect a smaller bankroll, is you have to make conviction bets on things that feel pretty sure.
Right.
So like I've spoken with the devs at Cambria many times. I've had calls with the Pacmoon team, the Insrt app team. That's another one where I really did well, and also people really wanted to spin. And I got some cool kickback from that. But I got hooked up with the developers and the project leads for that through Sam Stefanina. And he made that intro just because he knew that I was big on Blast. And they had asked him for somebody that's big on Blast to talk through and do some early user experience feedback and that sort of thing. So they gave me one of the very first RefLinks for the platform. And that ended up funneling a lot of people into the platform. They all made great gold gains. A lot of them won crazy stuff. I don't think anybody got a mad lad, but they got some really nice returns. And so that was another way that I was able to grow my bankroll was through these people wanting to use the protocols. But then I guess Pacmoon is probably the big winner here. So Pacmoon, I've been on it since I think February 8th. So like almost a month before Blast even launched. The day their Twitter went live, I caught wind of it from a friend, which I guess really that's the alpha is build your network and you'll find things that are useful before they actually become useful.
Yeah.
So Pacmoon, the community coin, everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. It's kind of crazy that you don't follow Pacman, Clemente.
I do follow them.
Well,
it was Twitter.
Okay.
Follow them.
That would have been something else. But I saw what they did in season 1, and I realized, oh wow, I didn't farm this very much at all. I posted some, but they sent me a nice little airdrop, and I was like, cool, that's neat. I get some free coins. Like at that point, I didn't know what it was going to be. And I played with like Blast and a couple of the other meme coins, and I just kind of got like ignored. I wasn't a big player, don't have a big social presence, so I just got kind of ignored by their team. And I was like, well, I like Pacmoon because the day that I first commented on their stuff, they DM'd me and said, hey, thanks for supporting us. And I was like, wow, you guys are cool. So I'm going to keep an eye on this. And season 2 was really where it got interesting because Pacmoon like kind of pumped up right after the season 1 airdrop when like the first wave of real Blast interest happened. People were like, wow, this is cool. And then everybody kind of got tired of it. There was not really anything fun to do on Blast at that point. Like I said, the North Korean Munchables hack happened and a bunch of other protocols just put out a bunch of garbage that nobody really wanted to mess around with. So the coin dumped off. I mean, it sold off to something like a $1 million market cap, which is like 1 cent per pack. And I was like, season 2, they're giving out 30 million tokens. It's probably going to be underfarmed because nobody wants to spend time doing something for a cent. And so what I did is I spent $35 and I got a subscription to Pinata Fun, which is a goofy little iPhone app that lets you throw things onto GIFs. It like has them preset so you can put pictures and things. And I made just a goofy amount of silly GIFs with the Pacmoon face and Lambo Land and Bobby and all them on these GIFs, and just started rapid fire tossing them out there. And I got a ton of views. I ended up in the top 40 on season 2, and they gave me almost 150,000 pack.
Damn.
So when you see that, you're like, oh my goodness. And keep in mind, when they made this drop, it was worth 3 cents a piece. It was like, sweet, I made $5,000. What a great job for 3 days of posting using a $35 app. That's an awesome ROI. When it gets really goofy is when you realize that now it's over 10 cents a piece. And so from somebody who had a very small bankroll at the start, I almost doubled it just from basically shit posting. Only in crypto, right? You post GIFs, you get paid to do that.
Are you still holding it?
I still have around 100,000 pack. I'm going to hold it till $1. We're gonna take this to be the second 6-figure airdrop of the summer. Let's
go. On that note, I farmed at season 3, and by the way, on that note, on the the Twitter DMs front, I tweeted out like a month and a half ago. It was one of my worst takes. I was like, I'm not farming Pacmoon because it's the same as the portal coin bullshit. It's the same as like block, like screw that basically. And Lambo Land DM me. He's like, hey dude, like we're actually not the same. Here's why. And I ignored it. I was like, all right, it's the same, like BS. I didn't farm season 2. I got in on season 3 and I got, I was like top 30. I think I got like 55,000 tokens. Still hold, I just deposited into Wasabi, but it was the same thing. It was like, that's a way to grow your working capital when you don't have a large bankroll, but the level of attention that they have and the level of care that they're putting into like really trying to build this community. I've been talking about this from the like TVL, comparing the TVL to Blast and Base. They're basically the same, right?
Oh, yeah.
Base obviously has a lot more of that activated, right? That a lot of that capital is probably more active. Possibly you could make the argument versus Blast. I don't have any metrics to back that, but I was looking at it, I was like, okay, there's 3 meme coins with a fully diluted market cap of over $300 million on Base. Pacmoon is number 1, and at that point it had an FDV of like 40 mil. I'm like, all right, something's off here, and I actually bought some. But that's all to say, like, what's your bull case for Pacmoon? Like, how are you kind of thinking about what the bull case would be? What scenario would we need to be in order for this thing to hit like $1, for example, which would be a 10x from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously none of this is financial advice. I'm sure all of those disclaimers go out normally. I think it's pretty much inevitable that Pacmoon is going to get close to $1 billion FDV. Every chain has one. There's always a winner. You saw it with, I guess it was SHIB and Doge a long time ago. Then you saw it with SHIB back in the last bull run. You've seen Solana do crazy things with WIF and with Book a Meme and all that. Like, the reality is people like financial nihilism was kind of a meme up until like a year and a half ago. It's real. People want to gamble because they feel like even if they lose, their like situation in life doesn't change. If they win, they maybe escape the rat race. So people want to believe in something. That is the bull case for Pacmoon. You have over $2.5 billion in sticky liquidity that Pacman is literally subsidizing with probably 9 figures worth of an airdrop coming out in May. Like, that's a lot of money. So people are incentivized to keep their funds here. So, I mean, the gold jackpot we talked about, that's a big reason. You think about the gold jackpot's probably worth somewhere between $15 and $20 million right now based off gold prices. If you think, okay, well, Pacmoon's probably the most likely community to get that because of the size, virality, number of holders, etc., and it's worth barely 2 times that in market cap. So you can almost get a 1.5x for free just for holding something with literally 0 risk. That's the easiest bet you can make on Blast. It's free money. I mean, obviously it might not hit the jackpot, something else might, but like if we're playing expected values, it's the best expected value play. So people are going to want it. And that's not even talking about what's coming next with Pacmoon V2. I can't share what that's going to be. Bobby would probably hire somebody to come kill me if I did. But I've talked with the team about what they're doing next. And it's really, really cool. I know Lambo, you said Lambo DM'd you. the reality is they are not copying anything. They are creating the meta. They've captured the attention of Blast. I mean, you look at the metrics, social metrics, people that are actually interacting with Pacmoon, it's blowing people up left and right. You look at like Jen Defer, you look at Wardaddy, like these content creators that were like medium-sized have gotten massive, massive engagement over the last month and a half when they latched on and realized, oh my gosh, a community coin that's not just a total meme. Like, yeah, it is a meme, but it's also not. It's
Right.
the coolest growth hacking going on in crypto right now. So, I mean, that's the bull case. Everybody's going to want to be in.
And on that note, this is a side note, but we're seeing Jen and Wardaddy are freaking dominating right now. What we're seeing, I think, within and Blast is kind of amplifying this. Pacmoon helped amplify that. Is we're seeing the first class of kind of NFT Twitter. They went through their ups and downs. They made their money. The level of, I think, motivation and drive that they have is a lot lower this time around versus comparing them to like 2020, 21, 22. And we're seeing this new class of content creators, I think, emerge. And there's a lot of money to be made in being able to capitalize on these types of opportunities. It's just about finding how you can fit into it. But I just wanted to, anyways, bring that point. I don't know if you agree with that.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, I think that what you're seeing a super unique situation with Fantasy Top because of it. It is a direct way for creators that catch that fire to be able to monetize in a way that's totally different, totally unique. I mean, it used to be, okay, show ref links, show whatever NFT you got whitelists to, get your X money from posting, engagement, farming stuff. But now, because of Blast and Fantasy Top, if you get a hero card on there, you can absolutely go bonkers because you're getting 1.5% of your total trading volume on your card, and 10% protocol revenue is getting shared with all the heroes based on how they do.
Wild.
That's nuts. Absolutely nuts. I mean, I think there's over $7 million in ETH that's been spent on ripping packs just in the last, 3 days? So you've almost got $1 million going to 120 different people for quite literally existing.
So people, for people that are new or maybe aren't unfamiliar with Fantasy Top, it's basically daily fantasy like you would play with like fantasy football with the NFL, except with literally crypto Twitter influencers, basically, or creators. So you can buy these cards you can either get a discounted card or you pay a full price, or you can just buy in secondary and you can build these decks, participate in tournaments. There's a flash tournament that just came out. It's ending actually in 34 minutes. And depending on your performance, you can get, we don't really know what the prizes are. That's what I want to ask you about next. You tweeted out, correct me if I'm wrong, that the rewards that we're going to see just from this flash tournament, not even the big tournament coming up, is going to blow everybody away for the players, for the creators, etc. That there's going to bring on a new wave of FOMO. And then on top of that, we have these discounted packs, these free packs potentially getting closed in terms of when you can claim them, that it's going to bring in another wave of users into Fantasy Top.
Oh, yeah. So right now, they got 34 minutes or 34 minutes to close. I need Sirius to start making some tweets. He's the quarterback for my team. But I'd love to get a couple extras out of him before this thing ends. But yes, they're giving out 77,777 gold bars for this flash tournament.
Sorry, say that again.
77,777. So 77, almost 78K gold bars, which if you use NFT stats, moon math on Blast Gold, that's somewhere in the realm of $1 million, maybe a little bit more. Just for this first flash tournament, there are 13,000 people in the tournament. Even if they did it linearly without any scaling for doing well, that's what, like, I don't know, $100 a person just for playing. Obviously, there's going to be rewards for performing well. And that's what I'm betting on is if you get a top 400, 300 deck, you're probably going to make a couple grand off of this out of gold. That's just the first flash tournament. The main event coming, there we go. The main event coming on Monday is 222,000 gold. It's literally 3 times the size. So they're going to give out over $3 million in gold just for playing fantasy sports with your favorite Twitter people that you probably already interact with. I don't know why anybody isn't just slamming this. Because like I said, you're going to have discounted packs and free pack claims go away. Travis has been hinting about that for the last 24 hours. Those are going away. You can also check the Dune dashboard. The rate of opening of those is shrinking to 0 rapidly. They're almost all out. At that point, the supply curve, it's like 0.27 ETH to rip a pack, which is a lot. So you're not going to see a ton of supply come from that. Obviously, we got some supply coming in from winners of this tournament or like placement. So that'll be a little bit extra cards. You'll see that. So I think right after the tournament's over, you'll see 60,000 cards get unlocked from decks. You'll see some sell-offs. You'll see people opening packs. But then at the same time, people are like, wait, they just gave out $1 million and they're giving out $3 million next week. So why would I sell all my stuff when I could just roll it into another deck? And they're going to do that. And then they still have, I think it's like another 450K gold to give out after that, just from the first distribution. So they're not even a tenth of the way through their distro after this tournament.
But even without the gold, we're not even taking into account the cash prizes. I'm assuming there's going to be something, maybe not the flash runner, but they made $7 million here. So sort of cash prize they're going to be getting out as well.
So they're funded. They're venture capital funded. There are multiple partners that have seed invested, that have given them funds. They don't need to monetize off of this yet. They've got tons of runway. But yes, they've almost pulled in $10 million in the first 4 days of operation. I think it's Mikado said on Twitter that they're turning most of that back to the players. So you think that's an extra, $6-7 million on top of what they've already got to give out in gold, to give out in pure ETH. They're going to keep this thing running. It's nuts how much value is locked here just to play a card game. It's amazing.
This is the first time I watched Friendtech play. I'm like, dude, there's no way this is like, what are we talking about here? It's not on Twitter. It's like we're moving to a different platform. And I faded it, which, you can make the argument that it was the wrong play because they, you could have made 5, 6, 7 or multiple tens of thousands of dollars playing it if you were a top performer. But Fantasy Top is the first time I'm like, oh, this actually makes sense. And going back to, I don't know if you heard me talking to Legendary about it in terms of like a competitive advantage. I'm like giga obsessed with Twitter. It's what I've like obsessed with for the last 18 months. So it actually feels like a game that people can get a competitive advantage with if you like obsessed with it. And then we're not even taking into account like season 2 where new heroes get introduced to it. Imagine if we get like a Beeple playing this game, right? And what his cards would go for and the attention. Like if we're simply just playing the attention economy within Blast, not even more people coming to Blast, but within this Blast ecosystem, Fantasy Top feels like a winner. I can't believe we're already 30 minutes in. We're going to get Wardaddy in here in just a second. Before we wrap, Beast, how are you thinking about when you look at the existing ecosystem, when you look at the potential TGE, do you have any, I hate to put you on the spot, do you have any FDV, fully diluted market cap predictions for Blast upon the TGE?
Yep, I do. So I've talked about this a lot with friends. I mean, part of the whole farming situation is modeling out what you think the expected returns are. I'm a little bit more optimistic than some of my friends. I think 15 to 20 billion FDV is not out of the range of possibility. I also don't think we're going to have a crazy much larger amount of inflation of gold over the next 3 weeks. So there's a couple caveats. One, are we actually getting TGE on May 20th or at the end of May? I'm not 100% convinced on that. I was originally thinking maybe we push into June. However, with the jackpot and Blur on Blast coming in a couple days ago, I think it's possible we actually do end up at the end of May. That's great for the price of gold because that means there's just not a whole lot of time for inflation to happen. If it gets pushed back, that's also fine because it means I can farm more gold. So I think 15 to 20 billion is not crazy. I mean, it's a crazy number, but it's not impossible.
I agree.
I think you have that happen. People are not realizing there is a season 2 of Blast. There will be more gold. There will be more given out. Literally, Pacman's given us the whole playbook. He had that video interview with Jin and Wardaddy, and he said, we are going to basically make Robinhood, but with native yield. I think what you're going to see is continued DAU incentivization onboarding via gold. He's going to use the treasury to make actual passive revenue just for people existing. And it's going to be the best casino or stock market trading platform, whatever you want to call it, in the world. You get money better than T-bills for just having money on the platform. So he could make a perp DEX. He could make an NFT perp DEX. He could tokenize friggin' stocks and let us trade those on Blur. There are so many opportunities.
It's so wild when you actually zoom out and I find myself getting stuck in the day-to-day of, hey, what opportunities am I farming? How much do I get into? But zooming out and actually thinking about the bigger picture, laying out what you just talked about and building this incentive of, getting to like 100 million TVL for a perp dex, for example. He's laying it on I posted this clip this morning from Wardaddy and Jen's podcast. It's like, oh, using the native yield, they can literally make like $5 to $10 million without having to charge the user. So they can actually build, not having to worry about monetization, which a lot of times can ruin a lot of apps, a lot of platforms, because the customer's like, oh, I'm going to go look at other incentives, right? Or other platforms. When you look at the 0% fee and this, he's been talking a lot of game in terms of what this could play out with. Before we wrap, I'm about to bring Wardaddy on. I want to talk very quickly about Blur. Any thoughts on the Blur token? Blur season 3 ending is supposed to end May 20th, which I'm expecting that to not get delayed. But right now we have the Blur token at a $1.2 billion FTV, 40 cents. It's staked right now. I have some in there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I expect Blur stakers and Blur farmers for season 3 on mainnet to end up getting part of the Blast airdrop. I've talked to the NFT stats about this a lot. I think what we'll see is something like 12.5% of Blast airdrop to people. I think 2%, something like that will go to the Blur season 3 stakers. I think you get the rest of it split 5% between points and gold. Blur as a token is a little bit of a weird one to me because Blur nuked royalties and most NFT revenue on ETH1. They didn't nuke it, but it came in as those values were going away. So somehow they've got to figure out how to continue to derive revenue and to support this token's reason for existence. Governance, nobody cares about governance. It's the world's biggest con in crypto. Nobody cares about governance. DAOs are stupid. They don't work. People want revenue share. They want fee switches. They want revenue share. So I think the magnum opus may be turning Blast into that revenue generating product for Pacman. I don't know exactly how he's going to support Blast and Blur as a token. Maybe it's a split between those. I don't know. Maybe he'll do a token swap at some point. I really don't know. I don't know what any of the backroom deals. I don't know what any of the angels. I don't know what Paradigm got as far as Blast goes. But I think what you're going to see is Pacman aggressively monetizing to support his tokens. He's set up the whole system. He's had a plan the whole time. He's been feeding out little tidbits via interviews. And if you just watch what he talks about, the guy knows what he's doing. Yeah. So I think you'll see Blur probably catch a bid at some point next bit. They're not giving out Blur at the end of season 3 from what I can tell. So it's not like there's going to be this massive supply crash going to farmers that are going to cash out. They're going to have Blast token instead. Obviously, VCs are going to exit at some point. They need to as tokens unlock. The whole point of investing for them. But I do expect to see revenue share go to Blur holders at some point, whether that's from native yields on Blast, or that's from when he actually does build the greatest perp dex in the world. I don't know, but I know he's got a plan. We don't fade Pacman.
Don't fade Pacman. I'm fully on the on board with that. ICO Beast, thank you so much for joining, man. Truly amazing to hear your thoughts. Love the way you're approaching it, crushing it, even with a small bankroll, which by the way is still like 30 grand. Like, get out of here. Make sure to follow him at beast_ICO on Twitter. Underrated follow that I almost don't want to promote because he's dropping some fire alpha that I want to myself only. Thanks so much for coming on, man. Appreciate it. Have to bring you on again to talk more, but you have a fantastic weekend.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, man. All right, the last event. We've gone through the first 3 traders, everyone sharing their own unique strategy, their bankroll, how they're navigating the Blast ecosystem, in addition to some predictions for 2024. Before we wrap, the last guest, the last trader we're having on is Dalton, aka Wardaddy, aka Wardaddy Capital. He's a research analyst at Protect. He is the co-host of Remint Reality, hosting it with Jen. They just hosted Pacman. I was watching the interview. It was absolutely fantastic. He's been establishing himself as one of, if not the leading content creator on Blast. I made the prediction this week. I'm like, this guy's him and Jen are going to make $1 million each off of Blast. We're going to see some Blast millionaires this year. But Dalton, man, I'm going to bring him on. Good to have you on. Where are we hearing you from here?
Bro, what's up, guys? How is everybody doing? Can you hear me good?
You sound great.
Good, bro. Yeah, bro. I'm on vacation right now with my girlfriend in London. I'm a huge footy fan, like a fucking massive footy fan. So I came out here to watch Spurs. We've been getting our asses kicked, but it's been a good time.
Awesome. Where are you? Okay. Fantastic. Well, it's good to have you. And you sound great. You got great Wi-Fi in the hotel.
Let's go.
I hate to hear the losses on that.
Oh, bro, it's been atrocious, bro. It's been atrocious. We're going up to Liverpool tomorrow to see if we can see 3 losses in a row. So it's been a good time. Fuck it.
Well, despite the losses, IRL, you've been freaking crushing it on Twitter.
Bro.
You've been crushing it on Fantasy Top. It was great to see you getting the much needed, the well-deserved traction there and kind of recognition. It feels like this week, last couple of weeks, as a prominent content creator on Blast. I actually, first, just to start, let's walk me through your introduction to Blast, when you got into it, how much bankroll you decided to put into it, and when you really decided to say, hey, this is going to be big. I'm going to put some time, energy, and kind of my brand on this because you're really a prominent creator on this front.
Yeah, so basically, just to give people background here, I was an NFT analyst at Proof. Proof was like my first main job in crypto. So I've been in crypto since 2017, but that was like my first main job. That was like my big boy job. Before that, I had played football, and that was what I did, right? So I made the pivot, just started doing research, writing long form and short form content for Proof. And that's kind of when Blur came out, and like we were just seeing like this massive explosion, right? And like obviously Moonbirds got pounded by this, and that wasn't the only reason Moonbirds went down, but it was something that was like, all right, well, this is now something that's happening within the space, right? Getting to know Pacman, being close with NFT stats, like this is just something that we saw day in, day out, prices going down, people saying that this new bid liquidity was kind of crushing the space and everything like that. But then the people that took advantage of it and really, really farmed Blur, we saw this huge airdrop, especially Blur season 1, right? Like these guys making 6-7 figures, some people even 8 figures. So when Blast was announced, I instantly kind of put the analytics hat on, put the analyst hat on, and I was just like, okay, what are we going to see from this? How is this all going to play out? And I don't know if I was bearish or bullish out the get-go. It was more so I was just like, okay, this guy's really going to pull like the same loyalty metrics. He's going to pull the same kind of playbook that he played last time, right? And I think that we're still seeing like a lot of people fade this, which I don't understand. I'm like, dude, this is not a tiny little NFT marketplace that we're talking about on ETH mainnet. We're talking about a fucking layer 2 that has so much traction. He's going to pull the same playbook where he's going to do like a loyalty score against Arbitrum and Optimism and Base. People are going to have to pick like, who is your L2 home? We already know that ETH NFTs are going to get bridged over to, they're going to pull the Frank DeGods playbook, and ETH NFTs are going to be traded on Blast. It's like, we know these things, right? NFT perps are going to be big over there. There's just so much stuff that we could do that I think the traditional NFT holder and the NFT user hasn't really explored, because the people that are still here from 2020 are accustomed to it being easy. You buy something cool, it goes up. That's not the game, bro. We're evolving. So yeah, it was a pretty easy kind of transition for me, especially my background being in DeFi before all of this. So it just made sense.
So actually, I want to dive into that very quickly on the people kind of fading Blast, right? And you still see it. Part of it, I do feel like people feel like they're quote unquote late, right? What do you?
Which I don't understand. Like, where? Late for what?
They're late to the airdrop. They're getting diluted to the Blast token, or they're getting diluted. Like if they get their golden now, their exit liquidity. Like, how do you, if we zoom out a bit and think bigger, right? And right now, part of the problem, Dalton, is there's so little of us right now, or at least it feels like unique wallets, despite Bitcoin's price going up, for example, unique wallets has not significantly increased. Retail is not here despite Bitcoin hitting an all-time high. Part of that was, I mean, majority of it was driven by the institutional adoption. These ETFs, the bull run came like 3, 4, 5 months early, basically. Than what people were expecting. The limited people that there are, we're seeing kind of these guilds emerge. We have the Blast people. We have the NFT people. We have the ordinals people. Part of the last year, basically, we saw people migrate these ETH NFT, almost maxis, or people that were ride or die. They migrated to ordinals. And like that's been a growing culture. It's hard for me, for example, to picture ordinals people getting really excited about Blast right now, because they're having their fun, their high conviction play is runes, is ordinals, is like building Bitcoin L2s. which is totally fine. But the reason why I bring that up is like what Blake kind of said, is like everyone wants to be early. No one wants to feel like their exit liquidity, and like Bitcoin ordinals can freaking crush, and Blast can crush right now, but there's only so many of us right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that little
Yeah. So, and I totally agree with you. So the best way I'm going to frame this is we kind of talked about this in, I believe it was the Zed interview, the Magic Eden interview that Jen and I did. Back in 2017, the best way to kind of frame the ecosystem, or the NFT, there was no NFT ecosystem, the crypto ecosystem in general was like, you had Big Daddy Bitcoin, you had like ETH was like starting, right? Like it wasn't really like had any traction. And then you had altcoins, and altcoins were any project. And it was just like, okay, we have these altcoins. So then you had the historic like alt season of 2017, and that's where everybody made their money. And that was like Dogecoin, stuff like that. And like just rather like what was the coin that we were talking? Sia coin, DGB, like all these like really shit projects that really didn't have anything, but they were just a blockchain project. So the two ways you made money was Bitcoin or these other shit coins, the pot coins, the weed coins, and like you had these crazy theses, and that was it. That was crypto. And then from there you got into DeFi, and like you had DeFi summer, and then DeFi summer, then you had NFTs, and now you have NFT-fi. And then he had NFTs that were on a different blockchain. And then he had meme coins. So like now we have all these different verticals. And so like, yes, have we seen the bull market come early? Yes. But more so, we have all these different verticals that didn't exist a few years ago. So like now you're seeing proper valuations come in for things, and you're seeing over valuations of things because things are easy. So I was just talking with like Thread Guy, Farouk, Frank the Gods was on there. And like we're sitting here chatting about meme coins. And it's like, this is the easiest way to make money right now. I'm like, yes, right now. That's the easiest way to make money right now. Like we're going to see all of this liquidity transition to something when Big Daddy Bitcoin decides to pull his dick out and say, you know what, we're going. What's going to happen, bro? Ordinals are leverage exposure to that. And then people from Solana are going to be like, holy shit, I'm getting left. Like I got to get into ordinals. And then that is going to take over mindshare. So yes, in my opinion, the only things to pay attention to right now, BTC ecosystem, BTC L2s, BTC DeFi, BTC ordinals. Yeah. Runes. Yes. That over there. And then on this side, we have L2s, but the only L2 that I'm really interested in is Blast, and then maybe Base. And Base, like I see it, right? But I'm not convinced that Base isn't the last one to go, because like, what do we say the top is? Every single time it fucking happens, Coinbase app downloads. So that is our exit liquidity. Right now, we're just PvPing each other.
Yeah.
So like at the end of the day, like, am I thinking about Base? Yes. I'm like putting like my profits over there and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, here's my long-term bags. Bull market comes, that's going to go. We know Base is going to go. But until then, it's Blast, it's Ordinals, and Solana. That's it.
How are you? So let's talk. And I agree. But right now it is PvP until we see some sort of retail come in, and we can talk about that all day long. But when you think about Blast as a whole, the ecosystem, and how you are navigating, I want to talk fantasy top, and I actually want to deep dive into it a little bit more. But how much did you put in? And if you don't mind sharing, how much gold have you accumulated? What does that look like for you in terms of what the overarching strategy has been? Because when you look at, like, I don't know if you've heard the other traders, it's a varying level of risk tolerance, of time that they're willing to put in, of like different apps they're trying to, like, some people are going to lose a lot of money and they're going to make up for it in gold. But anyways, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah. So really, like, I'll go over like my trading style in general. I'm not looking to maximize gold exposure. Like I'm not like, so I'm looking to make money. So that I'd rather have money right now. And if I get money from like taking part in some of these apps, then cool. But like even fantasy top, right? Like I put like an ETH over on day one, and that ETH became like 7 ETH, and I started flipping things and all that kind of stuff. And then like I had Blastopians, and I bought Blastopians between 0.03 or 0.04 and 0.07. And like that was a banger. So then I sold all that at 0.28, and I had 10 of those. So then I put that 2.8 ETH over into fantasy top, and then I've been flipping that. And like I still think that we're going to see a sell-off in the next like 24 hours on Fantasy Top of like cards that are undervalued because people are like, well, gold, I ranked 4,000th place and like this fucking sucks. And I'm like, okay, well, you got 4,000 out of 14,000. Like, obviously you're not going to get anything. So there's going to be FUD there and people are going to be like, dude, fuck this shit. I don't want it. And I'm like, okay, that is the perfect time to go in and like actually get a solid deck. Right. And I think these things are undervalued, and especially like epics and legendaries of certain people. I'm like, okay, but I was playing this during testnet. So like I understand the game mechanics. So Fantasy Top, I think, is interesting. But then, like, for instance, Wasabi, I take advantage of the vaults and stuff like that. But I think all in all, I probably have, dude, I have a lot of wallets over on Blast. I think I have like 30 wallets.
No, that's insane.
So I think, I don't know how much gold I have. I would probably say less than 1,000.
Why so much? Why so many wallets?
I can't talk about it. Look, here's a couple, they might be hot takes, right? I think that, especially after talking to Pacman in the interview, I think that we're trying to put a dollar amount to gold. And I'm not so sure that it's a dollar amount instead of a bucket, right? So like, how have we seen this work in the past? Let's look at the Jito airdrop, right? Like if you would have put one soul in on the Jito airdrop, into Jito, you would have made like 15K off of that, right? I think that these Sybil, you could call it Sybil attacks or whatever, but like at the end of the day, Pacman wants to see daily active wallets go up. He wants to see volume and TVL. So like if you can spread wallets, we don't know how much like gold is actually going to be valued. What if it's like, if you had 10 gold across 30 wallets, then 10 gold gets you the minimum entry to, you get what I'm saying? What if it's 50 gold? And so like people are like saying, well, okay, $18 and I have 75 gold and there you go. And I'm like, dude, but what if it's just like a bucket? So like if you had over 10, then you get this airdrop. And
Fit
you had
into
over
this
50.
tier.
Exactly.
I actually was listening to that this morning where literally during your podcast that you did with him, he was like, what we want to do is identify core users, like real users of the platform, and then reward them and get like a dollar amount of really what their contribution is, right?
Exactly.
So gold, the way he was saying it, right, if we're operating under what you're saying, is gold is a proxy or kind of a measure of how much of a user you are of this platform. Pacman wants to maximize that and might place you into a tier of where you rank on that, give you additional gold or additional airdrop or whatever it is from there.
Well, and I think one of the things that people are kind of missing here is the fact that I think that these apps or dApps are responsible for distributing gold and things like that, right? Like Wasabi gives me my gold. Blast doesn't give me my gold, right? So like at the end of the day, are we really saying that Pacman is going to trust the dApps to deliver the fucking airdrop? Like that doesn't even make sense to me. So like, yes, I agree that gold is valuable. No, I don't agree that there's going to be a dollar amount to that, because like, you're going to tell me that like, they're going to do the math on all of this shit and it's all going to check out and everybody's going to be happy. No, like I just don't see that happening. And I think that that's like so crazy to me to be like, okay, well, the whales have 28,000 and this person had, and there's only 700 or 7.7 million or whatever we're distributing. And then all of a sudden, like, we're going to say like, okay, well, Pranksy got X amount and CBB got X amount. I'm like, dude, fuck that. Like put them into a bucket and like maybe the top performers. Sure. But then you're going to say like little me and you and Jen and everybody, you get what I'm saying? Like, I just don't think it's as specific as people think it's going to be. And there's going to be a little wiggle room here.
Right. People are not like the way people are using it, where they're trying to just see that blast gold number go up, does not mean that they're going to receive the biggest air. Just like it's way too linear. You're going to think there's additional curveballs. That actually makes sense to me.
It makes sense to me. That's how I've been paying attention to it.
On that note, because I like the way, sorry, my mic's acting. You talked to Pacman. You talked to, and you had that perspective from it. Is there anything else where you feel like any other hot takes, or you feel like the way you're looking at it, the market doesn't necessarily agree with you right now when you look at Blast as an L2, whether it's from a market cap perspective, strategy, the bigger vision, etc.?
I would say, like anybody saying that they're late, they just have no idea. And this, we see this time and time again, right? Like we're going to see 8-figure airdrops go to people and then people FOMO in, right? That is just what happens. And we see it constantly. And so like to anybody listening that is like, oh dude, well, I don't know X, Y, and Z. It's like, dude, just stop. Like find people that you trust that have been consistently right through this cycle and say, okay, like this person knows what they're doing. And it's like, another thing is that I've heard it's like cabal like, right? And I'm like, it's not cabal. Like I was talking to cabal people the other day and nobody was farming this. So I think it's just like this. It's some people just don't know how to be early to things, right? And that's just the way it is. And they need to see, well, I'm talking to somebody that is consistently marking a top. But this is something that I think that you do a really good job of, is like identifying something that has staying power, right? So like something that I commented on one of your posts the other day where I'm like, you find something that works, right? You find something that has staying power. You find something that's interesting. You let it hit a local top and it's going to come back down. It happens every single time. Happens every single time, right? We're going to see it with fantasy top cards right now, right? Everybody's like, yeah, I'm fucking paying 8 ETH for this shit. And then in like 24 hours, it's going to be at 2 ETH, right? Buy it at 2 ETH. And then if it goes down 50%, like, fuck it, whatever. But like, I think that there is staying power in some of these things. Base isn't going to go anywhere. Blast isn't going to go anywhere. Solana's not going to go anywhere. Memecoins, this and that. Like, this is a cycle here. We're seeing all these things, and it is PvP. And so I don't know. I think people just get too wrapped up in like, am I exit liquidity? Am I not exit liquidity? I'm like, dude, find a fucking thesis and stick with it. Like, if you're wrong, you're wrong. Like, there's so many times I've been wrong. But there's also so many times I've been right. And like the only way to make fuck you money is if you're right and you rotate. And so like, I don't know, that would be my take.
And you have conviction in it overall.
Right? You have to.
There's going to be lows. There's going to be the Twitter stuff that goes back and forth. There's going to be other things that work too, like runes. And like, it doesn't have to be runes versus blast. Like those
and it's not
have their own worlds. You just got to find out what works best for you specifically, right? Like you can't be in everything, which some I've like struggled with, and I'm learning how to operate in. Why blast for you, right? Like you were saying, there's we're seeing base, we're seeing Solana meme coins, we're seeing all these things. Why are you choosing to dedicate basically your brand, your portfolio, your trading, like hyper focusing on this versus everything else? Why do you feel like Blast is going to be the outsized potential winner here?
Because we've been shown time and time again, don't fade Pacman. Like it's like similar to you were obviously around for this, but like Frank in the early days, when Frank like paper handed bitch tax was fucking legendary on Solana back in the day, right? And then like them pivoting and pivoting and pivoting and pivoting, like the dude could do no wrong. He had the hottest fucking hand. And I was like, man, like, okay, don't bet against Frank. And then it turned into like bet against Frank, right? But like, I think we haven't seen Pacman hit the other side of that. So like you work with the trend until the trend fails you. And like, I wouldn't fade Pacman right here. Like, especially if he comes out like Spider-Man meme style, where he's like, all right, optimism, Arbitrum, like, no more. Right. And I'm like, then what's going to happen? Like all of this exploratory liquidity that we're seeing, like dabble in different things, is going to like concentrate on Blast. And like, dude, Pacmoon is at what? I don't even know, like some tiny ridiculous market cap.
90 billion FDV.
Yeah. Well, and like Baja and like some of these other like early day one meme coins, right? Like I have a fat bag of Baja and I'm like, dude, I'm not going to fucking sell this because I'm just like, if it goes, it goes. And you're going to tell me that Baja is like, you get what I'm saying? Like this is the thesis. If I burned 30K on that, I burned 30K on that. And it is what it is. Because
but at least you have a thesis is the big thing. It's like, and that's been the piece I've been working on, and actually having a lot, like you can sleep at night when you're buying into something and you have a thesis. You're like, dude, if this is wrong, okay, cool. But at least like, this is how I'm thinking about it. This is how I'm going to approach it. And that's it. And that's it. But at least you have a thesis that then allows you to take actions appropriately. Right. So
you gotta have multi vertical theses though. Like have a thesis on ordinals and runes. Like that's one bucket. And then base, and then blast, and then Solana. You get what I'm saying? Like these are different buckets. SocialFi bucket, the NFTFi bucket. Like because like if, for instance, I bought the Pico Top Clemente style of Frempet the first time, and I was like, damn, I bought it $1.92, and I watched that bitch go to 20 cents, Best believe I was buying the entire way down. And then it bottomed at like 20 cents. And I was like, all right, I'm dying on this hill. I invested probably 50, 60K in that. But I like bought here. But then like it ended up being a really good trade, right? Because I just had conviction in that thing. So I don't know, that Blast just makes sense to me, right? So that's a conviction thesis for me.
So when you look at getting exposure to this conviction thesis, there's various ways of look. It's an ecosystem, right? We have Fantasy Top, the SocialFi bucket. Within this overall bucket, there's little buckets in it, right? We have the meme coins. We have the dApps. They're also dropping tokens, right?
Exactly.
And those are potentially going to have very interesting upside. I was talking about it earlier on the stream. It's like we could see a DeFi summer level launch where 100%. Tokens are being launched from these dApps and the points that you got, and they might then run back. Like, it's going to get real weird. How are you navigating? Like, are you finding these winners like a Wasabi and trying to be like, hey, I'm going to farm the referral codes, or I'm going to like create content around it? Like, how is your strategy in terms of Blast as an ecosystem, positioning yourself in it, and how you plan to kind of navigate this and your playbook for the months to come?
I would say like the main thing is if you're taking profit and rotating profit, right? Like I think Blastopians go to over an ETH, right? Like I just do, but I was already up like 6x on them.
Right.
So I was like more than that. Right. And I was like, okay, I'm going to rotate this and I'm going to see if I can 6x again, because 6x, 36x, like that is big. Right. But if I sit here and hold, I'm not going to get the same returns, and I'm at risk of losing my gains. Right. And so I rotate inner vertical and then I rotate intravertical. Like I'm moving, right? And I think like a lot of my bags are rotating towards BTC. Like a lot of my stuff, if I make any money, it goes to ordinals and it goes to runes. And I'm like very bullish on runes because that makes sense to me. Like buying Wizard and Pups right here just makes sense to me. And like, again, I could be burning $250,000. I don't care about that. Like, I don't care if I lose on that, because like it's a thesis and I want to see it through. And these numbers, dude, I didn't start with that much money. Like I started trading back in 2020 again, after the Cryptopia hack. I started trading with my fucking stimulus check. And that was what, $1,200. And like the $1,200 is now multiplied, you know what I'm saying? But like, if you have a small bankroll, you take risk on that small bankroll, and you have a thesis or somebody that you trust that has a thesis. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. You go make more money elsewhere and then you fucking throw it back in. Right. And that I don't know. I think Blast is just one of those things that I agree with you. These TGE events that we're going to see is going to be badass. Like Fantasy having a token. And that's probably going to happen fucking in what, August, September? We have no idea.
Very soon.
Yeah. And like, I'll keep playing this game and hopefully that it gets rewarded. Maybe it doesn't, but I'm not going to stick my TVL into something and lose my TVL for X, Y, and Z. Like I see a lot of these people like, oh, I don't have 20 ETH to throw into something. I'm like, bitch, do you think I have 20 ETH that I'm just going to wrap into something? Like, no, I'm not. Like, I want to keep my shit liquid.
So on that note, I have and some of the strategies other people were laying out is on the, like, trying to farm that gold and taking that USDT, for example, putting it into like a Bloom, which has less than 5,000 users, 50% of their gold allocation hasn't been distributed yet, and going that way. That sounds like something you wouldn't necessarily do, because you're like, I'm rather buying an asset that is going to appreciate in value over time versus trying to get this gold allocation that there's too many unknowns about. I don't know how much gold I'm even going to get. We don't even know how much gold Pacman's going to distribute. There's too many unknowns in that for you. You'd rather buy these assets, trade them, and find the 5, 6Xs and then rinse and repeat in other uncrowded trades.
Bro, what is it? Like 10, like if you have $1,000 and you hit a 10X, you're on 10K, another 10X, you're on 100K, another 10X, you're on $1 million. Like that is literally the playbook for me. I'm like, and that's where I started, right? Like $1,000, 10X. Yeah. $10,000, 10X. Like I'm here to find liquidity and stay liquid, because we all just got wrecked watching NFTs go to zero, right? Like we don't want that to happen again. So stay liquid on these things. If you so happen to find a good gold farm that nobody else is paying attention to, it is so public right now that some asshole like CBB is not an asshole. I don't know it, but like some asshole with a lot more money than you is going to put in something way bigger than you. And that's not a game you can play. So like if that project had an NFT, or like, that's why Memecoins right now, Baja, like $1 million market cap or whatever. I'm like, that makes sense to me. I'm like, you're saying 1 million to 10 million, that's a 10x, and Pacmoon's going to go to 500 million. Like Baja's just going to sit there.
So I do like this Baja play a lot. It's up 50%, but it's up to a whopping $1.1 million.
Let's go.
Let's not get crazy here.
Yeah.
I'm in Pump.
Yeah.
I mean, that one's interesting. I do like betting on this meme coin side. It feels potentially uncrowded because of what you were saying, because of so many people. You're actually the first person that I've talked to or that has this mindset of like, and I agree, I resonate with it, because instead of going, oh, I want to trade, and I'm potentially just literally willing to lose money farming gold over the next 30 days, because as long as I break even and I rinse and repeat 100 ETH over and over again, that means I'm going to get gold. That's a fine strategy, but it requires time, and you're kind of betting on like a DApp, right? There's a lot of unknowns versus, hey, I'm going to buy a meme coin that you can do. There's no gold bullshit to it, but the fact there's no gold bullshit to it means that you can then get a bigger, that means that it's not being farmed, basically.
Exactly.
Right? The farmers are diluting some of these plays, actually, which is an interesting way of looking at it that I like, and that I think a lot of the people listening to are like, dude, I don't want to farm. I just want to go in a casino, try to make money, try to find the 10x. And if you're betting on that, that's why Pacmoon was kind of a no-brainer. Obviously, we can look back and say that now, because not only were people not necessarily farming it, but it was this meme coin side of it that had the additional plays to it with Wasabi, where you can deposit it in with all these different integrations that you can do with it.
Yeah. No, bro. I'm staying liquid this cycle. Like that was my promise to myself. I was like, my goals here, 8 figs, right? If I go from $1,200 to 8 figs, like pat on the back, you did a good job, kid. But like, I think that you take these profits and you rotate into things that are outside of this bubble, right? Not all of them, right? Like I just put all my Blastopians in, they were in the Wasabi vault, took 10 Blastopians out. I sold all that. And then I went into Fantasy Top. Now Fantasy Top portfolio is at like 10 ETH. I'm still probably going to throw another ETH in there, because like, I want to at least be in like the top 10 on this next fantasy thing. And that's one of those where I'm like, okay, I might be lighting my ETH on fire, but if I get a top 10, then we'll see what happens.
And as a player, you're a hero. You're a hero.
Exactly.
I'm very interested to see. I'm going to hit you up and see how much you make off of this tournament and what the fees are. I don't know if they're distributing it right away, but I think the actual creators are going to get rewarded very well. And then we have season 2 of cards coming out, and like that whole aspect of it. Fantasy Top is interesting, but what you're saying is you made a bet in the NFT ecosystem with Blastopians, right? You're like, hey, this is like, there was literally less than 60. At one point I checked, in a 24-hour period, there were $30,000 of 20 in volume in the 24-hour period. Blastopians were at 0.03. Did I buy any? No. But when you look at it, you're like, okay, that's my outsized bet. You made your 10x on it. Now the market has caught up to the fact that Blast NFTs were under-farmed, were undervalued. You then moved into a different sector. You took your 10x and you go, okay, now I'm going to go to meme coins, or I'm going to go to the social fi sector. And then you found your Fantasy Top. You got in early. You're a hero as well, but you're like, okay, this is something I want to specialize in next. Then you're going to take your 10x there, and you might move it onto something else in Blast, or you might move it onto something else. But it does feel like FOMO right now, because it's so PvP, that the attention span of crypto Twitter right now is absurdly low. Like people will move on to one thing, and then this meme coin will pump, and then they'll move it into something else. And then so you can't actually play. It's a very difficult game, but it sounds like you're having some success with it.
Bro, it's rotator season, dog. It is like, it's so easy. Like right now, how many people are talking about like pups at like $45 or whatever? That was so obvious, bro. You think these people are going to lose? You think they're going to lose? It's not how it works. It's not how it works. They let it go down. And the same thing we saw with Whiff. It's the same thing we saw with Popcat. It's the same thing we're going to see with Pups and Wizard. It's like, it's just, I don't know. I can't help some of these people, bro.
Before we wrap, any predictions on, I mean, you covered a lot of things and it wasn't necessarily Blast, but it was fantastic. What else are you looking at when you look at Blast, the ecosystem as a whole? We have season 3 potentially ending May 20th. We have the unknown of when TGE is going to happen. We have unknowns of what the FDV is even going to be. NFT Stats just moved back his estimate from 15 billion to 10 billion FDV. Yeah. He moved back his gold price from $18 to $12. Anything there?
Yeah, we talked about it yesterday on the Thread Guy Spaces. I thought it was pretty interesting, right? Like he was getting bullied for his 15 billion FDV. Look, at the end of the day, I think this is a solid hold, right? Like I'm not fading Pacman. Like I'll keep money over there just because I think holding Blast or even holding Blur is like a good idea. But Blur is like an NFT marketplace, not necessarily so bullish on ETH mainnet NFTs, and I haven't been for a long time. I think that we're going to see NFT perps get really interesting. I think that like blue chips that haven't had a TGE event on ETH mainnet. Why would I buy a Bored Ape right here? I think that that's just stupid. So like, I think it's a pretty easy short. Ordinals, I think, are really fascinating right now. Like I think Quantum Cats are like the most obvious buy that we're going to see this cycle. Pops Wizard, that's something I'm paying attention to. And then also like at the end of the day, like the end all for me is like I'm going into punks and squigs, and like that's how I'm like kissing it out and being like, all right, cool. I don't know. That's it. I literally just gave you my playbook. I'm like, this is literally what I'm doing. So arm
me up, man. I'm excited to see how this plays out. 2024 is going to be very interesting, man. And you're going to be one of, if not the leading creators around it, to be honest. Like we're seeing, I was talking about this earlier with Beast. There's the old guard of kind of content creators that were early to NFTs that dominated the content creation, got up to hundreds of thousands of followers. They're fat and happy right now.
I said this yesterday, bro.
They're fat as hell. They're chumming it up in whatever. Dude, they don't have the same pep on their stuff. Come on now. They don't have the same drive. But there's a new class of creators that are very interesting to watch for. You're one of them that still have this level of drive that others don't have. I was watching this, the fantasy top performance. I was shocked. I'm like, dude, these guys don't do shit.
No, bro, it's crazy.
Like, not trying to call them out, but it's like, when you look at their analytics, when you look at what they're actually doing, I'm like, oh, dude, like I could come in here and like straight up like place pretty well just as a creator. Like, it's not
bro. Somebody asked me, like I have that group chat, right? Like all the Wardaddy card holders. So if anybody has a Wardaddy card, just hit me up. I'll put you in that chat. But they asked me who would be my go-to buy, like that I would instantly just wrap up, like bang, I'm in. I actually said you. I was like, this guy, you would be like the hungriest dude, and like you don't have such a big following. So like your reach would be good and those kind of things. You're consistent. I'm like, it's really that simple, right? Yeah. Like, and I had that Thread Guy Spaces yesterday, and like K Money comes on, and like dude was pissing me off because he's like, bro, fuck all this shit. I'm like, dude, you made your money. You made your money.
You can't say that if you have it. Like if you made your money, it's like you don't have perspective anymore, right?
No, it's like I love Kobe, right? I love Kobe. And I'm like, yo, he made his money. Like him saying like, nah, this is bullshit. I'm like, it might be bullshit. In 6 months, it might be nothing, but I can make money in the meantime. Right. And like, he had that same level of hustle 10 years ago. Right. Like when he was like in it, but like, and I eventually will be in Farouk's position. I'm going to be a guy that's like, you know what, guys, back in 2024, that was crazy, but I'm out. I don't know what the fuck is going on. But I hate when they act as if they're still in it. I'm like, you're not in it.
You're not in the trenches. You're not in the trenches. Let's go. Let's go, dude. All right. Well, Dalton, we're over time. Thank you so much for joining. Good luck this weekend. Keep crushing it. Thanks, we'll keep DMing. I'm excited to see how Fantasy Top plays out. I'm in it to win it just because I'm literally giga obsessed with Twitter. I've been obsessed with Twitter the last 18 months. So I'm like, oh, like I have
Fantasy's cool, bro. It's cool. It's a lot of fun, bro.
It's dope. It's dope. Yeah. And see, it's literally just getting started. Like again, people hitting me up. They're like, dude, why are you getting a Fantasy Top? Like what that?
It's over, bro. It's over. I'm like, dude, I know.
Cards. It's all like the supply's so big. What are you doing? I'm like, oh my god, dude.
They don't get it, bro. Now. They don't got the foresight. They don't got the foresight, dog.
So, anyways, Dalton, thanks so much for joining, man. Make sure to follow them at Wardaddy Capital. Listen to their podcast, dude. You guys are crushing it, by the way. Remit Reality. Follow them on Twitter. Listen to the podcast, all things JPEGs, RWAs, and crypto across the Web3 ecosystem. Jen and Dalton holding it down. Make sure to listen to that Pacman interview. Is absolutely fantastic. Dalton, thanks so much for joining. You have a fantastic weekend, man.
Yeah, see ya.
That's our show, everyone. That was a little 2-hour stream. Had an absolute blast with you all. We were joined by 4 traders, all sharing unique bankroll, unique perspectives, how they're navigating this Blast ecosystem. Dalton there at the end sharing some unique takes on the NFT and crypto space as a whole. I hope you all enjoyed it. We're going to keep doing this. We're just getting started with this content. Hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe. The Daily Bone podcast. I got to pick a winner here. I had to pick a winner to give away $100 in pack. I'm going through it. I'm going to pick Groovy T. Groovy T, you just won $100 in pack. I'll pick the other winner away, but Groovy T, I'll give you a message on Twitter. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe. Listen to the Nifty Morning Show or the Daily Bone podcast every single day, 9 a.m. Eastern, every weekday. We talk all things crypto, NFTs, and more. Thank you all. Follow me on Twitter at ChileArmy123. Let's go. Thank you.